Welcome back to the Respect the Drive podcast. I'm Tedward, and we're here at the new home, the new podcast studio at Garage 42 in Acton, Massachusetts. Garage 42, as you know, as a viewer of the channel, is where I store my cars. I now have a fleet of 4. I don't know if we can call 4 a fleet, but that's close enough for me. I am not one of the wealthy people with 14, 15, 16 cars. So let's call it my fleet, because on my level, this is where we're at. But instead of the beautiful and quite competent building that was in Woburn, Massachusetts, still in Woburn, Massachusetts, but now there is a 20,000 square foot storage facility in Acton. And it's not just a storage facility. There's full detail bay, full wash bay. There's going to be PPF. There's going to be service. They have Hunter mounting, wheels, tires, balancing, all the stuff, and quad stackers for miles. Okay, maybe not miles, but there are 47 quad stackers in this building. I'm looking out over them right now. Eventually, we're going to get this podcast into some video space. We'll put it on YouTube and all that stuff. But for right now, we need to get this done before 2023 ends, because I have not recorded anything since January. And most of that reason was because I was just dying to get into this space. Finally, a proper studio that is not in my basement. I don't have to invite strangers to a weird basement, turn off my furnace to keep the audio levels good, and offer them seltzers while I tell people upstairs to keep the TV down. No, we're in a dedicated space. This is the real deal. And I'm looking at my Porsche and my M5 and the Team Champagne Ninjas fleet, the Depreciation Society fleet, out the window. This is maybe going to be the coolest podcast space I've ever seen. I'm very excited. And today, to kick off the reimagination, the rebirth of the Respect the Drive podcast, I have my special guest, special in so many ways, Eddy Siegel of the Acuity racing team. He's also sponsored by Scott. He's sponsored by Eurotechnatic. He has been driving his little ass off at Grid Life events in his FK8 Civic Type R and doing quite well. He has his own podcast called The Backseat Drivers, starring him and our friend Devin. I don't know Devin's last name. Eddy, what's Devin's last name?
I'm blanking on it.
You don't even know it.
No,
this is
I
your
do
co-host?
know it. No, here's the sad part.
Devin AMG is what he's in my phone.
No, so his last name is Herndon, but I always mispronounce it, so I try not to even say it. So, and then there's also the fact that there's a Devin who's a girl who also races in Grid Life. So when I first started getting into Grid Life...
This is the worst story I've ever heard. We're going to end it here.
We're going to end it there. Fine.
But here's the thing. If you want to hear about Eddy's like Grid Life racing, you want to talk about like really what's in depth about like
nerdy track
shit and all the Grid Life stuff. Great. You already know about Backseat Drivers. You can hunt that down. But on today's podcast, I want to talk about the logistics that has gone into us getting to these places, because we have had the most fun this year. And I know when I say like, oh, let's talk about logistics on a podcast, God, that sounds boring, but it's not, because our friend David, who is the proprietor, the owner of Garage 42 and Scott, RS Pro, Overland Concepts, all these great little businesses that we work with, he got a toy that made hauling the cars to all of these tracks so much easier, I think, and way more fun. And somehow, with some real man math, cost effective, because we don't need to get hotels. He bought a Freightliner Cascadia Toterhome. It has a Detroit diesel 15.6 liter engine. It's an inline 6 with a big old snail on it. It makes 2,000 pound-feet of torque. And for whatever psycho, lawless bullshit reason, we are legal to drive this thing. We drive semi-trucks. It's 78 feet long. It has a 44-foot 3-car hauler on the back, and it's got 2 stories. So you go watch the Freightliner videos. You can see what it's like to drive it. It's got a 12-speed automatic gearbox. It is a semi-truck right? I mean,
it's bigger than some apartments in Boston and New York.
Now, David, who's sitting right next to me right now, so I'm just going to say everything I would say to his face anyway. When he comes up with ideas, a lot of times we go, that's great, David. Good job, honey. And we kind of just like ignore what he's doing. And then sometimes he rolls up and pulls an air horn and we go, oh my God, he did it. And he bought this fucking monster. Pardon my French, but this is a fucking monster.
I'm going to stop you there for a second, because I just want to say that this isn't all his fault. I have some responsibility.
It's mostly his fault.
It's mostly David's fault, but I have some responsibility to come up with the initial idea of this. And it all started from the night or the day that we were at Watkins Glen, sitting under the Porsche in the pouring rain, trying to push it into the trailer.
That's right. That was a rough day. So I remember I came home from the airport. David picked me up in one of the cars, and we went to Renscott, went to the old Garage 42 in Woburn. We had a nice F350 Super Duty, a nice enclosed trailer. We drove it out to Watkins Glen. So it was like the longest night ever. It sucked because I flew like from California, landed, and then drove 6.5 hours to Watkins Glen. So it was like the worst night of driving. And I had the last stint of that trip too. And I'll tell you, I was like asleep at the wheel. Like that was one of the most dangerous drives I've done in a long time. Like not proud of it, but did it, whatever. We got there. And then that Grid Life event rained the whole time. Like,
that was terrible.
And I was trying to sleep in the F350, not very comfortable. I tried to sleep in the back of your Durango, not very comfortable. It was the first Grid Life event I had been to. And so a lot of people who normally I would like go hang out, they were all excited. They're like, oh, hey, I would love to see you. And I'm like trying to play nice, but I had nothing left in the tank. But long story short, we had like these Airbnbs. It was fine, but the event was kind of a nightmare in the rain.
Oh, absolutely. And then the logistical nightmare of having multiple trailers, multiple vehicles, storing everything, forgetting things. Like that's the biggest thing that I've come to I used to forget things all the time. Like whether it was something little like a charger or something big like my laptop.
Well, it's easy to forget things when you have to take them out of things all the time.
Exactly.
And when you have the ability to be like, oh, well, like if you have a workshop, it's like, well, all my tools are here, and you're not constantly taking them in and out and in and out. But now with this Toterhome, everything lives in the Toterhome. Like it has its own tools, it has its own compressor. There was some growing pains where we realized like, oh shoot, we like forgot like an adapter for one of the air jack systems, stuff like that. But like nice enough that Grid Life people usually had that stuff. But here's what I want to get into today, because we had to drive this thing. And I remember when you brought it to the shop and we first saw it, I was I was really intimidated by this truck.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's a 18-wheeler. Like,
I mean, when you stand in front of it, I don't think my head goes to the top of the grill. I mean, it's a straight up semi truck.
It's a semi truck. When you open up the owner's manual, it's not like, oh, welcome to your RV. No, it's a Freightliner owner's manual, just 18-wheeler manual. Like, yeah.
Now, before I get into what it weighs and all this stuff, I want to talk about the first time each of us drove it. So the first time I drove it, David had pulled it out of Woburn, which is like some, narrow-ish roads to get it to the highway, to get to where we needed to go. We got onto the Mass Pike. If you don't know the Mass Pike, it's the east-west highway that runs across the entire state. Eventually goes into New York, goes up to Buffalo, basically. My first stint in the Freightliner was David drives it to the Mass Pike. We're in bumper to bumper traffic. And then he just goes, okay, you want to drive? And I'm like, sure. And he got up.
Yep.
He just got up. And I'm like, are you out of your mind? And then we hot swapped. I mean, granted, the truck was stopped. We were in bumper to bumper traffic. This isn't like we were going 60 miles an hour, but I got in the vehicle, and then I didn't know where like the seat adjustments were. So he's adjusting my seat. This is all on camera. I did not publish this because I'm like, this is not a good look for YouTube. YouTube commenters, if you do anything wrong, you're a moron. And if you don't do anything crazy enough, you're a pussy. So which is which? But anyway, hot swap. And then I think I drove the entire way to New York or New Jersey. We drove to New Jersey on that one.
You drove up until the New York-New Jersey border, and then I took over.
I don't think you drove it that night.
Yeah, I did. Because I drove it, because remember the highway, there was a backup. So I was the one who drove off the highway on those tiny little back roads in the middle of the night.
Okay, so the number one thing, like growing into this truck was really wild, because we're like, now I'm driving a semi truck, and I have good, I will say, I'm not trying to be cocky. I think I have really good lane etiquette. I think I'm a good highway driver. I think I'm a pretty intensely, by the book, generous, courteous highway driver. Okay. And I had the moment it happened really fast, but in the first like 10 or 15 miles of driving this, there was like another car hauler, like the kind of car hauler that you see taking new cars with like the double decker exposed kind of thing with like 8 or 9 cars on it, driving onto the Mass Pike. And I moved over to the middle lane. I let him get on. I passed him, and then I got back over. And then when he passed me, he gave me a thumbs up because he was like, hey, thanks for like the space, right? And this is all on video. That was the moment I was like, I'm a trucker.
I'm destined for this.
I loved it. And that was when I thought, this is like my favorite. I love this truck. This is the greatest thing I've ever driven. I was so happy. And I didn't know how to communicate this because I drive everything. I drive all kinds of wild sports cars and stuff. But this Freightliner changed my life.
It's completely different and just as exotic as driving the LFA. But just in completely different ways.
I agree. And there were like rewarding moments that I didn't know would happen. So do you remember we did get on the GW bridge. So I'm driving through Manhattan essentially. Gosh. And then we get on I had to cross like 5 lanes to get into the right lane. And I did it. And I have done a lot of wild, cool things in cars on racetracks and wherever. Off-road. I don't know that I've ever felt a sense of accomplishment quite as large as navigating nighttime GW bridge traffic in this thing.
So I just want to give a little bit more context to this. So if you've ever been on the GW bridge, for a normal vehicle, it's sketchy.
It's already terrifying.
You're going up these tiny little off ramps. This thing is so long, you basically can see the beginning of the corner as you're making the round.
You have to snake up these like cloverleaf type turns, and that means you got to put the front of the truck all the way on the outside of the turn so the trailer doesn't scrape the Jersey barrier on the inside.
So like when you look to your left out your window, you can see the trailer because it was that tight of a turn.
Yes.
So we get onto this, and it's basically bumper to bumper. Like nobody was letting anybody in.
No.
And you and I were both like, what do we do? And you're just like, I'm going to go for it. And you just started turning, and you're in such a big vehicle, people have to stop.
They can't not stop.
They don't have a choice. We're blocking essentially the GW bridge.
I do think that people are oddly courteous with this thing because it is so large and imposing. And if you start to make the move, like if you just kind of insinuate that like, yes, my blinker is on, but also, yes, I'm actually going to put a front wheel across this dotted line. People are like, what are they going to do?
Yeah.
You are a monster. Like they can't. So you do get some courtesy, and there's just this really nice sensation when someone gives you a flash behind. Now keep in mind, there's no visibility out of the rear of the truck physically, but there is a camera on the rear of the trailer that faces down. And that is really good because I can look up above me, above the windshield. I have a monitor, and that shows me that screen, which is super helpful because I've got great big mirrors on the side and I can see who's next to me, but then I can tell that I've actually passed a vehicle. So when I do make like a pass, I can make that pass, look up, confirm that vehicle is in fact behind the trailer, and then move over, which is very helpful because 78 feet is a long way back. It's not the easiest thing to see. But in those scenarios, when you're in like that bumper to bumper traffic, people are like more forgiving than if you were in a sports car. They like, no one's going to let you in your car, but they do tend to kind of let you make some moves because at the end of the day, if I have to stop this thing, I can stop traffic for as long as I want. Go ahead, beep all you want. You got to let me in.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was a smooth transition. I mean, it's all on video. It's on that first video that we did with it. And I think that's like one of the coolest things I've ever done in a vehicle.
I mean, it was like one of those moments where it's like, this is real. And I'm actually succeeding in the whole truck driving lifestyle.
So not all of it was like beautiful. Not all of it was great because we get to the Grid Life event. Now we're like learning to live in our new camper. We're learning to use our trailer. We ended up with a flat tire, our deflating tire, because we picked up what was like a railroad. It was huge.
I forgot about that.
Which David found that day. We got there late at night. We camped out, and in the morning he just did a walk around. David did a walk around of the truck, and he heard a hissing sound, and it was one of the 3 axles, one tire on the 3 axles in the rear, and it was deflating. Amazingly, we had like 48 hours to get it fixed. So he just called a tire repair, like a truck tire repair, which by the way is not some Joe Schmo in a flatbed that comes and changes your like, Explorer tire. No, these dudes like, holy shit, what an operation.
Yeah, they had everything, and they had the device to
big
take
air
the
jacks.
tire up. Yeah, the air jacks.
Yeah, I mean they lifted our trailer. So again, I'm going to get to the weight of this thing in a minute because I think it's a big deal, but I do want to talk about one big, almost major mishap that we did not communicate, I think, on the YouTube channel, because this is a story that haunts me to this day. We were driving home, and we have a Garmin GPS that's specifically for trucks. And the goal of this Garmin is you put in the weight, the dimensions, and all the stuff about your truck. So that way it will show you where you can and cannot go, because this is I'll just say the weight. It weighs 69,000 pounds. It's a 35-ton truck, essentially. So all in, it's 35 tons. 35 tons, which means like whenever you look at a road sign over most bridges, 34 and 35 are the highest numbers they go to. Like when you see what that is, that's it. We are the big boy. We are the limit of most bridges. We measured 13 feet 6 inches is what David and one of his guys measured. Now they did leave, they were generous about that in terms of they made it so 13, like if you went under something that was in fact 13.6, we would have some clearance. But I didn't know that. And also I had measured it. So I was, we just have it written on the dashboard. It's 13.5 feet, which is 13 feet, 6 inches, right? We get on 95. We're driving 95. We're going through New York. And suddenly I'm starting to see bridges that say like 12.9 or 13.1. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, David. Now David's in the back cooking. Okay. David's on the air fryer, his favorite thing in the world. This dude, nothing can bring him more joy than a fucking air fryer.
Than mac and cheese balls.
That boy loves some arancini. And if you make fun of the air fryer, he goes, then fine, you don't get any fries. Like, you want to eat? You better be nice to my air fryer anyway. So
he was so excited. He got 3 of them.
Got 3 by accident. Yeah, we'll talk about that in a minute. But we get to this bridge. And so now I'm like, okay, we can fit under this. We can fit under that. Not to mention, I'm next to all these other big trucks. And I can tell that some of the trucks are taller than me. So if I see a bridge and I see another Mack truck go under it, like, I'm not that worried. I'm driving. I've been driving for maybe 2 hours. We hot swapped on the GW bridge in bumper to bumper traffic, and I'm cruising, and then I see it, and I saw a bridge, and I want to say it said 11.9.
I think it was right on. Yeah, I think it was 11.9.
I think it was 11.9. Now, I wasn't scared when I saw the 12s, because I had seen 12.6, we cleared it. I had seen like 12.4, we cleared it. I'm like, okay, they really gave us some leeway on whatever this little thing says. But then I saw the number 11, and I'm like, bro, I don't know. This is bad. And so I stopped.
Yeah.
Now, luckily, we were in some traffic, but on the right lane, I stopped. And here's the thing. Suddenly, I stopped seeing trucks. And I'm like, oh my God, did I make the mistake? Did I not take a turn that I absolutely should have taken a turn like a mile ago? And all I wanted to see was a big old car hauler like blast through under this bridge. But I didn't see it. And there was nobody but cars. And I'm like, oh my God, we fucked up. Big, because there's nowhere to go. There is nowhere. We're also, none of us are that good at reversing this thing. David's the best of us.
Yeah.
But none of us are reverse 3 miles down an off ramp or reverse 3 miles down. Like, that's not, we can't do it. We need a Chinook to come in here and separate the vehicle and fly it somewhere. Like, we're fucked. We're like GTA fucked. And so I stop and I'm like, all hands on deck. David runs up and he looks, and he just looks at the number, because we're just staring at this number on the bridge, and we're all like, oh my God. And it's really weird when you're looking at an 11 and then I'm looking on the dashboard and I see 13. I'm like, we can't get under this. So we have walkie-talkies, because part of what we need to be able to do is like communicate when we're moving this thing and blah, blah, blah. So David grabs a walkie-talkie, and in typical David fashion, he kind of like mumbles something to me and just leaves the truck in the middle of the highway. Like, he gets out of the vehicle, and I'm like, where did he go? What's he doing? And I thought he was going to go look or whatever, but I don't know what's going on. And so then I got my walkie-talkie and I'm listening to him, and he's going, okay, go. And I'm like, I don't want to go, because I think I'm like, where are you? I'm so afraid that now I'm going to run over one of my best friends in the highway. Like, this will be the most catastrophically stupid event ever, that I've now killed or injured David while I am driving a vehicle that I have no business driving for like the second time. And I'm going to get it wedged and stuck under this bridge, and we're going to be arrested. We're going to be fined. This is going to be the worst. Like, it will just be like the biggest dumb story in the world. And then David's like, go, start crawling forward. And I'm like, where are you? And he goes, I'm on the ladder on the Toterhome. And I'm like, so that means that he has climbed the ladder on the back of the semi truck, essentially between the trailer and the Toterhome. And he's on like the roof, like looking, like peeking up off the roof. And he's like, just drive slow. So I'm driving slow and he's got his little head popped up over that. And I can see him in the mirror a little bit. I'm like, oh my God, this is like, he's riding the rails, man. He's like a hobo riding a train. And I'm crawling through this bridge and he goes, okay, you're going to clear it. You're going to clear it. Now, as we're like halfway under this bridge, that's when a car hauler with like 9 cars goes, whom, and he's clearly bigger than us. So I'm like, okay, this is a mislabeled bridge.
Yeah.
Fuck New York. This is a mislabeled bridge. And then I Googled it much later, found out this is a thing. People, we're not the first people who have had this issue. We're not the first people who have gone under this terrified thinking, oh my God, I'm on I-95 and I can't fit like a normal size semi truck in here. So anyway, I see that going. Now I'm like, okay, we're definitely clear, but I've also got to get David off of the back of this thing. So we clear the whole thing. And at the end, I just stop again. He climbs down the ladder, gets back in, and we continue on.
Yep.
But I've never been so scared in my life.
Yeah, that was a butt pucker moment for sure.
I don't wish I could say this. I want to say like it was a learning experience but the thing is we took this so seriously. Like I never did I look at this truck and take it for granted. Never did I look at this truck and say like we belong in this truck. Never did I look at this truck and say like, oh yeah, just wing it. Let's go. Like everything we do before you set off in this thing, every time I have a million questions to the point where you and David usually look at me like, just shut the fuck up and drive it. But I'm like, I need to know before we wedge ourselves in somewhere like a tick, because once you do that, you're so screwed.
You can't make a wrong turn.
You can't make a wrong turn. It's really hard to like reverse a mistake. And we've had to a couple times. We had
to a few times where I didn't think we were going to be able to get out. Like, I think it was when we were leaving. Mark had to show up with the food.
We forgot the ribs. Okay, so we pack when we go somewhere, we pack like a ton of food. And David went to the grocery store. David does a really good catering service when we go to these events. For 2 reasons. One, I think David likes to feed his friends. I think he likes to cook for people, even though he does more of his share than he should, and we need to do more cooking. I do think that he gets a lot of satisfaction out of like making a meal. 2, David's a hungry boy.
He is.
And he's not going to settle for granola bars and Gatorade. So at the end of the day, like if he's in charge of, while he's like literally sitting in front of me eating donut holes, he's a disgusting human being. What you eat on a daily basis and the way you look makes no fucking sense to me. You have 3 more years of this before you are like a 400-pound Scotsman shopping with. This is crazy. So, okay. This is why this needs to be a video podcast soon.
Can't buy a kilt. He's going to have to buy a blanket.
So we set off for Ohio or something, and he had bought all this food, but he left it in the refrigerator of Renscott. And so we made it like 3 miles down the road and realized, shit, the food's not in the refrigerator. And that meant that we can't U-turn this. Around, yeah. We can't turn around. So we had to call people who were there and they drove it out to us. We parked in a large church parking lot and they brought us the food, which was great. But I guess all to say is that like we have the dream Toterhome. We have the dream setup. We can fit 3 cars in it. We sleep 4 of us very comfortably in the thing, and we have a really great air-conditioned trailer, air-conditioned space. Like it's amazing in the summer when we're in a racetrack that is uncomfortable, and yet there are still big limitations because there's times when we're driving somewhere and I'm like, God, this would be so much easier if it was just like an F-350 in an open trailer, because if you screw up in that, you can disconnect it in like a heartbeat. I have no idea how to take this trailer off of the gooseneck.
We learned when we were at Laguna. I'll have to show you. It's fairly easy.
Okay.
It just takes a little bit.
Good.
But it's fairly easy. So
because no one trained us. I learned everything I knew from the internet on YouTube, like watching people drive these things. I learned. I didn't trust David for I want to say a month when he told, because he bought it and we look like when I saw it, I was like, we cannot legally drive this.
Well, yeah, you and I kept saying, dude, you need to ask the state police. We can't drive this.
Because his insurance company was saying, oh, it's insured as a recreational vehicle, or it's an RV. It's a passenger vehicle. It's not even an RV. It's a passenger vehicle in the state of New Hampshire where it's registered. And then the insurance company was like, you're fine. And I'm like, dude, I don't really care what your insurance agent says. What happens when we get pulled over on a major highway and they look at my Class D driver's license and go, you idiot, and arrest me?
Yeah, like the biggest fear I always had was like we'd be driving, everything be fine, and then all of a sudden like the cops would swarm us and be like, you blew by a way station.
But
boy,
what's crazy is we're not a commercial vehicle. This is not commercial. So when you go to the way stations are for commercial vehicles, which is wild. Commercial vehicles over 2.5 tons. 2.5 tons is like nothing. That's like what a normal car is now. Like, especially an electric vehicle is like 2.5 tons.
If you have a Hummer, I guess, with the commercial plates, you have to stop.
That's 5 tons. That's almost 5 tons. Wow. That's crazy. So with this, we don't have to, but we did take it. So David then takes it to, or he doesn't take it. He goes to, he basically cold calls a state police barracks. He goes to a Mass State Police barracks, which is local to Acton. And he goes in there with a picture of the truck. And he's like, David's very like soft spoken. I think a lot of people think like, oh, he must be like this big dick swinging guy if he's like got all this shit. Like, no, he's like very sweet and very like, hi, I have this. Is this a good David impression? I've got this truck and I'm just curious if I just wanted to double check that it's legal for us to drive it. And so they're like, sure, show us a picture. And he shows the guy a picture, and the guy's looking at him like, what? Because I can picture him driving up there, looking the way he does right now, just like his little Lululemon pants. He's got his pullover and his running shoes, right? And he's like, I bought this truck, and so he's probably thinking like, oh, all right, you bought like an F-350, and he looks at this thing, and every time I show a picture of this truck to somebody, they look at me like that's the craziest thing I've ever seen. So the guy's like, let me go check the truck guys, because they have a truck department, like the DOT truck cops, right? And he goes away for a little bit and he comes back and they're like, yeah, you're legal as long as it's not like hired and all this stuff. Just make sure you put not for hire on the vehicle and stuff. And he's like, okay. And so that was the thing. When he did that, that's when I was like, okay, I'll drive it. I'm okay driving. We're on the insurance. We're on everything. It's fine. But it is just such a massive responsibility to drive this thing.
So I think also you didn't mention that first thing, we didn't believe him that he bought it. For a good like couple of weeks, we were like, yeah, I'm sure.
Well, the first one he was looking at was like a 1980s Peterbilt thing or Kenworth or something.
I sent him that off of an Instagram post.
It was an 18-speed manual.
Yeah, it was an old Peterbilt that they'd converted to a Toterhome.
And that was when we discovered this was even a thing. Because he was like, can you believe this is real? And that's when we were like, wait a minute. And then he kind of discovered the Super C class and was like, oh, this is a thing. Yeah. And we were like, oh my God, this is a thing? They make these? And that blew my brains apart. I couldn't believe it.
It's crazy that it's such a small niche product and a group of people that are willing like to get something like this. I think it's crazy that it even exists.
Well, the other thing is learning to drive it. It's one thing to just get used to the size of a vehicle. It's another thing to be like, how does it rev? When does it shift? How much fuel are you going to use going up and down these big hills? Not to mention the fact that like you do not want to use the service brakes on these vehicles. Like the point of these trucks is to use the engine braking. And there's 3 stages of engine braking. It's on a little stalk on the right, and it like you going downhill, you're gonna start carrying momentum, and the thing is limited at 70 to 75 miles an hour on throttle. So once you hit 75 and you floor it, nothing happens anymore. It cuts power, but it can still roll beyond 75 miles an hour. So you've got to use the engine brake, and you can select 1, 2, or 3 depending on the intensity of what you want. So I learned pretty quick how to use this and feel comfortable like maintaining 65 to 70 miles an hour and never using the service brakes. Because the thing is, when you're in a 69, 70,000 pound rig, those brakes, you don't want to wear them out. You don't want to add heat. And you definitely don't want to be in a position where you have like, you're just riding them, because if they do eventually overheat or something, you're screwed. Now you might need to actually stop at the bottom of that hill and you've got nothing left. So you learn how to do all this. Every trucker in the world is like, okay, yeah, we know. But remember, this is a rear wheel drive vehicle. So if you use those, it's only slowing you with that rear axle. And that means that in the wet, in ugly conditions, if you slam it into like the top mode, you can actually like essentially lock up those rears. That's how you jackknife a truck.
Yeah.
So there's fear involved too, because we're like, how do we get used to this? Eventually it became a big puppy dog and I just learned to love it.
You, by mid-Ohio, because I took over for a little bit during Ohio, and you knew when the transmission was going to upshift.
You were like, okay, what's this? Because when you first drive it, 45 miles an hour feels terrifying.
Yeah.
When I'm like, dude, it's fine. I promise it won't tip over. Because it feels like it's tip over.
It has the weirdest feeling because there is no feeling. Like you have no feeling in the steering. The brakes, there's no feeling because it's air. And the only thing you can feel is how slow it is because when you hit the gas pedal, it does nothing.
Nothing.
So it is a little unnerving the first time you're getting up to speed and you feel like you're going fast and you look down, you're going 40.
What was it like the first, or all right, either the first time or like, what was it like for you to get behind the wheel of this? Because you drive, I mean, you're a driver, like you're literally a race car driver, and this could be nowhere close to that. And what was it like when you got behind the wheel of this thing for the first time, pushed your foot on the accelerator, and then looked in a mirror and realized what was behind you?
I'll tell you, the first 20 minutes for me was just trying to make sure I didn't run anyone over. That's the first bit is like, I'm terrified of staying in my lane, making sure I don't run over a family.
It's wide.
It's very wide. You have to make minute corrections with a steering wheel that does nothing for a third of it. and so that is going through my head. But once you get in sort of, like you said, a groove. So after, like, I would say within the first hour, it was just like driving anything else. You get used to the steering or the lack thereof. You get used to the brakes. You get used to the accelerator. But the biggest thing that I learned from you and just doing it is you have to prepare for whatever maneuver you're planning on doing miles in advance.
Yeah.
And whether that's slowing down, whether that's speeding up, whether that's getting off. It's not like you can just wait until you see the exit and get off. You have to look and see, okay, well, if we're getting off in a mile, we should probably get into the far right lane a quarter of a mile away.
Yep.
Because you don't know what can happen in front of you, and there's no room for error. If someone cuts in front of you, that's it.
That's it. You're going straight.
They're done.
Missed. It's done.
You missed it. That you lost your shot. Best of luck. So that's something that I had to really take into consideration because, as you know, we're just used to driving normal cars on the road.
And we make stupid moves where you're like, oh, I could probably get a few more cars up here on this exit. Like, let's just blast.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
then you weasel my way in here.
Can't do that.
Can't do that.
So that was the thing that I had to really take in and learn. And a lot of it is just respecting the truck, respecting the road, and respecting the people around you because you cannot fuck up.
No, you have to and you feel this sense of responsibility because you're like, if I screw up, it could impact like the drive. It could kill someone.
Oh yeah. I mean, if you're not respecting yourself behind the wheel of anything, there's a big fucking problem.
A big problem.
That being said, a 70,000 pound 18-wheeler that's longer than most tractor trailers and taller than most tractor trailers, you learn a lot about respect really fucking quickly.
It's so crazy. So I think you bring up a really good point is like preparing for things. You really do have to think ahead. And it's not just for making your exit. It's like if you want to conserve fuel in this thing, because remember, we were probably pushing 6 miles per gallon in this. Has 300. Is a 300 gallon tank, David? What is it? Or 150?
250.
No, it's 150. I think it's 150. It's a 150 gallon tank.
You got good at it.
I got good at it because I learned how to like, okay, stay off throttle here. Don't push it here. If I'm going to climb a hill when it's fully laden, going up a hill, you are going to lose 10 miles an hour. Like if you were cranking in a straight line at 70 and then there's a hill coming up, you're not doing 70 up that hill. You're probably doing 60. And that also means that if you are climbing a hill and then suddenly you're like chugging away at 60 and there's this car in front of you doing 45, you need to think about this way ahead because if you lift, it's over. You're not getting that speed back. You need to be like, okay, look, I see what's up ahead. A quarter mile ahead of me. I already know I'm making this lane change to maintain momentum. The whole game is maintaining momentum. This is it's so wild that in a truck that I'm getting 6 miles per gallon in, this is the most hyper miling experience I've ever had in my life.
Yeah, I can't even like literally what you said. So I think when I drive that truck, I would go as far as to say it is just as difficult, if not more difficult, than driving a really fast car at high speed. I mean, the amount of thinking you have to do mentally ahead of time and just figure out, okay, I need this and that, is just as hard as heel toeing into a corner at 120.
It really is.
And it's, I remember thinking in my head when we started doing this whole Toterhome thing of that Top Gear episode when they drove the trucks years ago. And like the beginning of the episode, they kind of took it, oh, this is so funny. But then like midway to the end of the episode, you could tell they were like, this is not easy. This is really difficult, and we need to give these people a lot more credit because it's not like it's like people are like, oh, but it's just a bigger vehicle. Yes, it's physically bigger, but because of the weight and the length, you can't just do a normal car's, you can't drive it like it's a normal vehicle. So like when you're behind the wheel of this thing, you need to spend all of your attention, what little brain power you have, you need to spend it onto that, on whatever you're doing, because that's the only way you're going to be able to get decent gas mileage, make it up hills without looking like a total jerk off with your hazards on at 25 miles an hour. Because like you said, if you like, that's something I learned when we were in Ohio. There's these big hills. And if there's cars, even at the valley, you're fucked.
Yeah, because you can't slow down.
You can't slow down.
You can't slow down
because you need to stay at 70
so that way you can get up the hill, the next one.
Yeah. So like if you're down there, that's why when you see truckers going up hills with their hazards on, that's because they fucked up.
Yes. And also, you know what this has done so there's a couple things. Number one, I understand the pride that truck drivers have for what they do and their rigs, because I fell in love with this truck. Like the way, you know how sometimes in Top Gear, like Hammond will fall in love with one of his cars and you're like, oh, fuck off. Like it's a car. Yep, you had this little montage experience. No, I fell in love with this thing. It's my little buddy. This is like a dog. It's a puppy to me. I love this truck so much and it makes me so happy. And I just, it's such a weird thing because every time I see it, I'm like, oh God, what an undertaking. Every time I'm driving it, I am like, I might as well have this truck tattooed on me. I love it.
Big.
Yeah, and it says big on the door. We got to get our own names on that fucking thing. But here's the thing. I get that. And then the other thing is it opened my eyes to infrastructure because every one of us drives cars. We drive maybe SUVs or sports cars or whatever. You pull off an exit, you don't think anything of it. Maybe we're like, ooh, I like this exit because it's got a good turn or an S-turn. Or what now we know is that they're all designed for this. Everything on an interstate is designed for this truck to get there, including the rest stops, including the fuel stops, including everything. It's insane. And suddenly you're like, oh, that's why everything is designed a certain way. That's why there's a 25 mile per hour warning on this exit that I take at 75 in my Honda. Yet in this truck, I'm like, ooh, that says 20. We need to bring it to 15. And suddenly you're like cranking at 15 miles an hour being like, ooh, I'm glad I looked at that sign.
I look at states differently now because I rate them based off of their infrastructure. Like Massachusetts, one of the worst. Come on. Do you remember you and I going into the fuel stop?
There's a problem. And I want to highlight this. Now, if you have like any sense about you and you've driven at night at past 10 p.m., 11, 12, 1 a.m., you have noticed that at rest stops, there's 50 trucks lined up. Maybe they just have their like parking lights on. They're all sleeping because truck drivers are limited to, I think, 16-hour stints. I don't think they're allowed to drive more than 16 hours at a time. So they have to sleep. You have to log that. That's a legal thing. So that way you don't have like sleepy truck drivers killing people. Same as pilots, right? And they line up and there's not enough room. So what during the daytime might look like, wow, look at all these giant empty spaces for all these trucks. Well, that's for 15 trucks. When these guys start like stacking up, they'll start parking on the breakdown lane leading up to the rest stops. And then after the rest stops and all this other stuff. But remember, there's a fuel stop in there that is for big diesel pumps with giant tall ceilings and all that stuff for the trucks to go in so they can fill with fuel. But what happens is in the daytime, very easy. Look at all this room. We glide in, we get our fuel, and we glide out. At night, they line up all these trucks on the side. And suddenly, what was a giant opening, a giant roadway with all this like room to play, becomes this narrow nightmare to get your rig into a slot. And me and you, David's asleep.
Corey and David are asleep.
Corey and David are dead asleep. I'm like, we cannot make it to Woburn and we need fuel. Yeah. So we pull into this fuel stop and I'm like, as we're inching out, I have to make a little bit of a left turn and I'm noticing, I'm like, I think I'm going to drag the trailer on a truck. So you get out and check for me. Walkie-talkies, thank God. Make that. But then because of that turn, I didn't have a straight shot into the fuel. And if you've ever been to any fuel stop, you might notice that there's like big bollards or concrete barriers that like go up to it. Now, that is to protect the fuel stations. But the reality is if you're coming in at an angle, now I have a trailer that needs to clear that. And I cleared that by inches.
You had, maybe 3-4 inches to spare.
And I didn't know how to reset it. Like, we didn't have room to reset.
We didn't, because the trucks were parked literally on that side, so we couldn't back up.
It was horrifying. And I thought, oh my God, we've just driven all the way from mid-Ohio to, we were pretty close to home.
We were
on the Mass Pike.
Yeah, we had just gone through
or maybe 84 or something. Yeah, we were in Massachusetts. And it was like, though, that's the thing is, you could do everything right, and your game-ending move could be that you overshot a turn or undershot a turn into the fuel stop at 2 a.m. And that's it. That's it. And what are you going to do? I'm going to go wake up a trucker who's on his sleeping stint to tell him that I can't make a turn because dumb without a CDL, this stupid fuck can't get his truck through this thing. I swear to God, there were times when I'm like, at least if we really screw up, I bet we could ask one of these guys to maneuver our truck.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And it would be the most demeaning, demoralizing, emasculating experience of my life. But you could do it if you really had to. But we managed to scrape by. But those are those things is every time you scrape by, you're like, ooh, was it skill or did I get lucky? And it often feels like we were thoughtful, but we got lucky.
Oh man, yeah, that was a rough one too, because all I was thinking was like, you walking up to the cab of that sleeping trucker and being like, "Hi, excuse me," and then he just opens his window and just fucking nails a piss jug at
piss jug, 100%. I would have earned it too.
You would have earned the piss jug.
Earned it.
Yeah.
No. So I guess the trucking life has taught me a lot. It's made me a lot more patient with trucks on the highway too, though, because I'm like, oh, I think everyone needs to drive one of these, so that way everyone drives like less assholes. Because when you drive one of these, you realize how much you kind of need as a give and take from others on the road to safely navigate this shit. But what you also realize is, just like there's bad drivers in cars, there's a lot of bad truck drivers. And we've seen some shit. Like, they're all texting. We've seen truck drivers do some really wild shit. And I'm sure you've seen it normally as a normal driver. But, when you're up there and you're really like, we sit above most trucks in this thing.
Yeah, we look just a bit. Yeah, we look.
We
down
do.
On
we literally.
We're better.
But like, we get complimented though. Like on the GW Bridge, people like tow truck guys literally like pulled up next to us and they were like, "That's the coolest rig I've ever seen."
It is a wild piece of engineering. This thing.
It's
because what they do is they take an 18-wheeler and then they stretch it and they plop an RV right on the back half.
It's the craziest thing in the world.
It's so wild.
It's so cool. I love it so much. And I never thought that I would get into this. Because, for example, I'm starting to really enjoy like just diesel trucks in general. One of my recent videos, I drove this 97 Ford F350 Power Stroke 7.3 liter turbo diesel.
The good one.
5-speed manual transmission. It was a blast.
Those are great.
And I didn't know how much I missed the sound of the Freightliner, because that, like, when you drive it for 8, 9, 10 hours at a time, you can't stop hearing it. It's just part of you. You feel like a World War II B-17 pilot who like has nightmares and can't stop hearing those engines. Like, it literally just stays with you for days.
I still hear the turbo spooling.
It's the best.
All you hear is turbo spool.
I love that turbo.
It sounds so good.
So I'm driving this 97 F350 and I'm just like, oh, I feel like cozy in like a blanket right now while I'm driving this thing, because the sound kind of brought me back to the Freightliner. And by the way, I can't believe we didn't say this. We have a name for the Toterhome. We named it
the Toter Tot.
It's a Toter Tot because David likes to cook tater tots in his air fryer, and we do in fact eat a lot of tater tots in the Toter Tot.
Yeah,
so we call it the Toter Tot.
Yeah,
it makes it feel a little smaller, makes it feel a little homier.
Exactly,
it's our little Toter Tot.
It's an awesome machine, and I think now we've also something also that we should probably tell the listeners is we spent at least a month going over the entire rig, figuring out how everything worked. It wasn't like, oh, I bought this thing and then next weekend we jumped in and left. We spent weeks. Remember, we would go there, we'd look at what we needed.
We practiced things. We just sat in it and looked at gauges and looked things up. And look, we did as much as we could without having like a trained driver come and teach us. But like we had to go through it. We had to learn how a bunch of stuff worked. And because this is like a built out thing, not everything is that easy. It's not like, oh, we jumped in our Toyota and this is the manual. It's like there's like 6 manuals in this thing because there's a truck with an engine, there's and then there's the rear stuff. And the rear stuff, it's like all the RV things where it's like the power supply and how to hook it up to the diesel. There's 2 diesel generators on it. How do you swap between like shore power and diesel power? All these switches, all these crazy things. And it's not like you can just Google like, how do I do this? Because it's like, no, this is a custom made thing.
It's one of one.
It's one of one.
And when you look it up, what you come up with is just like the generic owner's manual or just manual of whatever the device is that you're trying to figure out. It doesn't tell you how it pertains to in our situation.
No.
There's nothing that says, oh, hey, here is your microwave. It's also designed to be in a truck. No, it doesn't say any of that.
No, and there's interlocks everywhere too. So it's like, oh, if this is on, then that doesn't work. If this is like this, then that doesn't work. And so like we had to figure out like, oh wait, if the key is not in the ignition, then this doesn't work. If the key is on accessory, then this does work. It's like all this crazy stuff. And it took a long time. I want to just really, you're right. We need to like put it out there that we did do as much as we could.
We really did. I don't want to, make it sound like we just jumped in the thing and said, "Oh, here, good luck in the GW."
No, I straight up was like, it's the last moment I was like, we shouldn't be doing this. We shouldn't be driving this thing. And we did. It was fine.
I would say by the time we had gotten through the GW, I felt fairly confident. And then I started driving, and I'm like, okay, maybe I spoke too soon. Like, because remember, the road, like whatever highway we were on, it was shut down.
That's
right.
And
I had to get off on these tiny side roads with no light.
Now, luckily, I knew that already.
Yeah, that GPS came in clutch.
Me and Corey were the only ones awake on the way home on one of our first trips, and suddenly, like I-84, like major interstate, it just said I-84 closed. It spoke that to me, and I'm alone in the cab.
And this was right after the incident with the bridge.
Yeah,
so we were all on edge.
So Corey, you and David were asleep. Corey is doing homework, and she heard that, and she walks up and she goes, "Hey Tom, did the GPS didn't just say I-84 is closed?" And I was like, Corey, get on the maps right now and see. Get on Twitter. I don't know what's going on because I'm terrified now because I've got to navigate maybe some narrow roads or something in it. But luckily, so the thing is, this weird coincidence is that Corey is my number 2 when it comes to Cannonball. So Corey knows how to navigate bad situations in a time crunch on a road. So when we do our mission control center for our Cannonball team, Corey, I look to her a lot for problem solving and being able to cross-reference like Waze, Google Maps, Twitter, news reports, like what's really going on. And she was able to very quickly gather that they did in fact close I-84 and that we had to get off of I-84, follow some crazy traffic pattern, and it was fine. And we knew that the next time. But it's like anytime there's a wrench thrown in, it gets very scary because, like I said, if you make a wrong turn or if you dig yourself into a hole, it's really hard to get out.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean, you have to learn how to drive the truck, operate an RV, learn about electrical engineering because it has multiple different electrical systems on it.
And you have to know who to ask for help, and it's really hard to know
it's
sometimes.
Very hard.
Yeah. There's a million systems.
Not to mention the whole hydraulic situation with the gate, the lift gate, and all that stuff. Like, it's not like...
Yeah, loading cars is scary because you're putting a car on a lift gate, you park it on that, you lower it to the ground, you park on the lift gate, and then you have an elevator, you elevate the car. And I tell you, it always seems a little scary when you got to drive a car that you're 15 feet in the air, and if you go backwards, you run off the ramp. I mean, there are chocks, but like I don't want to test those.
Yeah, I hope we never have to test those.
So there's a lot to be, but I do think that respectfully, we've really taken our time to learn it and get used to it. And we don't rush anything.
No.
And you can't rush anything.
You can't rush anything. Taking this, when we're at the track, when we're ready to leave, it takes a good 5 hours to disassemble
the awning.
That thing was a learning. That may have been the toughest thing from the beginning.
That might have been the most dangerous thing we did. There's a big awning
David almost flew away.
Yeah, well, the awning is a sail. So
it is. It's a giant sailboat.
And we didn't know really the order of operations to like put this awning on, because it's not like we press a button and it unfolds. No, you have to like manually like assemble these.
It's a 40-foot awning.
It's a 44-foot awning.
Yeah.
And so you got to do this whole thing. And so in the wind, this awning becomes a literal sail. And I don't know about you, but like wind is strong. It's a lot of force. So if you screw this up, it could really do some damage. And so we definitely didn't have our shit together on the first time. Now we know what to do. We're safe about it and we know how to do it.
We have a ladder now too.
Yes, the ladder helps. But no, I think this thing has been such a blessing, and it's been a wild experience. I feel really lucky that we've been able to even learn how to drive it. I think this is one of the coolest things I have access to. This is one of the coolest things we do as a friend group. We have the weirdest adventures together.
I know. So much fun.
And that was the point. That's why David does this, because for one, David, he's sitting next to me. He's like one of the most sentimental people I know. And he always wants our little family to be together. He always wants like, I want to spend more time with you guys. Or, hey, like we've all been busy the last couple of years. David's been building a new Ren Scott building, a new Garage 42. You've been racing. You've got like, you and Corey have been like doing tons of family stuff. Mm-hmm. I've been working nonstop. And I travel for work a lot. So we don't have what we used to have.
Yeah, we used to see each other every day.
And this is like our bizarro world uniting thing that we know when we're going to a race, we're going to spend 4 or 5 days together. And it's great. And it's the most fun thing you could imagine.
So much fun.
And we have space for each other. Like, I think we all have our own little setup and it works great. And I'm so thankful for it. And it's something that's really fun. And I hope if anyone gets the opportunity to like see one of these things, drive one of these things, experience one of these things, like you're not wrong by being intimidated by it, because it's very intimidating, but they are designed to be driven.
For sure. I mean, I think anybody that can understand respect and has a little bit of understanding of how to drive with a trailer, you could probably figure it out.
Yeah. So before we sign off, because I think we're probably at an hour, do you have any final thoughts before we close this out? The fact that we're here recording makes me so happy. The fact that the new Garage 42 is above and beyond anything I imagined. Sitting here looking out over this warehouse. It sounds so cheesy to say warehouse, because it's not a warehouse. It's like the best facility I've ever seen. But like I'm looking at a fleet of insane cars in a building that I knew was happening, but I couldn't grasp the size, the fit and finish, the beauty of it. And it's a nice place. I mean, this is now a clubhouse, because if you're a member here, you're not just getting a cool place for your car to live. You can come here and there's services, right? And there's a simulator, like a really nice simulator here. So if you're somebody who maybe you store your car here, you're going to want to come and test out a track before you go to your track day. You're going to want to come here. Maybe you want to hang out with a couple friends. Maybe you're like, I'm going to swap cars. I'll have my buddy meet me here. Or maybe you and another member are going to use this as your home base before you go out for like a good like Sunday drive together. You're going to go do a little blast up to New Hampshire, Vermont, whatever. Come hang out, gear up, get on those computers, figure out what you're going to do. Now, also much more comfortable place during the week. If you were like working from home and you're like, I got to swap cars or I want to have my car washed, come here, hang out. You're going to want to hang out here.
Yeah, I might come here on a Friday and work from here.
I mean, we're going to be doing the podcast anyway. So I'm thrilled that this is like a cool space to be.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, I am literally staring at my Camaro.
It's the best.
It's right there.
I know. I can see my cars. It's like the coolest thing I've ever seen.
It is really cool. Yeah.
So hit up David, or actually don't hit up David. Don't hit him up. You'll never get anything from him. Go to Sean or Edwin.
go to the website.
Go to the garage. But do not say hi to David. He'll go, who are you? And say, don't worry about it. Then go to Sean or Edwin.
Us.
Yeah.
Who are you?
So what? Oh, hey. Yeah, David has too many things on his mind, and he's usually not even thinking about this. He's thinking about rockets because he's a fucking nerd.
Yeah.
Am I wrong?
No, you're not
wrong. He's smiling right now because he's like, wait, what's on his computer right now? It's a spreadsheet about his favorite rockets. He's ranking his favorite rockets.
I think I was here. I think we were here in what, like August, May, June, July, August, sometime around there.
I don't know.
It was just a shell still.
It was.
I mean, like I was walking around, there was nothing. No. It was just a dirt floor.
Nothing prepared me for this.
And then I came back a couple months later and it's this building and I'm like, oh, okay, this is real.
When you see the roll-up doors, when you see there's a moat. There's a river that is a literal moat that goes in front of this place. And then there's the coolest gate I've ever seen. We need to get, it's so secure that we can't get into it. So this is, we need to figure that out. But like, it's got this great gate. It has presence. It's not, I mean, it's hard to describe because when you walk in here, it just feels like it almost feels like a wedding venue. It feels like it feels like home. It doesn't feel sterile. It doesn't feel like a gross like commercial space that you're just like, oh God, like you want to be here. You want to hang out here.
It is one of the first times I think there's very few storage facilities that are designed from the ground up for automotive storage. It's not like, oh, I bought an old Walmart and I'm parking my cars on some jack stands.
Yep.
This was designed from the ground up to solely house vehicles. And they did a fantastic job with everything from the doors to the storage itself.
Not to
the
mention
stackers.
The toter tot can fit inside this building if need be.
Hopefully
which
I never have to.
I almost want to see it happen just to see it happen, but I am not going to be the one to back it out.
Yeah.
But there's two giant roll-up doors. The detail bay is insane. I mean, this is what we just said. Like, this was purpose-built. Everything was planned.
Yeah.
And the detail bay is incredible. I mean, it's the wash bay of your dreams.
I think what this is a culmination of learning from the previous building and adding in what people want. And I think they did a fantastic job. And I hope people enjoy it just as much as you and I do.
It's the best. We'll be here a lot. So, if, there are occasionally times when people are like, oh, I've really wanted to meet you. Well, I'm probably here. So, we can always make that happen. I'm going to have lots of guests on this podcast. I'm excited to have Will Lee, PTSRS, back because his are some of my favorites. I love hearing his stories. But for now, I think we're going to sign off. So huge thank you to Garage 42 in Acton, the new home of the Respect the Drive podcast. If you need to store your car, if you need to wash your car, if you need to be part of something special. Automotive, something special, this is the place to be. This is the club you want to be in. Reach out. There's links in the description of the podcast. Reach out to Sean Gill. Reach out to Edwin Diaz. These are the people you want to talk to. These are the people you want managing your fleet, or maybe your just individual car. This place also in Acton is now much more convenient for a different group of people because the Woburn facility is great, especially if you kind of live in Boston or Somerville or Cambridge or whatever. It's not very far. That's easy. But a lot of people with a lot of cars, if you've got 14 cars, sure, maybe you do have a big house in Concord or somewhere in central kind of Massachusetts. But the reality is you probably don't have a 12-car garage. And if you do, well, that's your own thing. Good for you. Good job. But if you need to store some stuff, you want to make sure there's no mice going through your cars. You want to make sure that, or maybe, you know what? I'll say it. Maybe you're hiding cars from your spouse.
I was going to get there.
Maybe you have so many cars that when the excise bills come for you in February, like February 1st, and 14, 15, 16 envelopes come to your door, you go to the mail first. You make sure that you're not traveling that week so that way you can grab the mail so your wife doesn't see all these envelopes with the purple on it. And she goes, wait a minute, when did you buy 5 more cars? Look, I'm not saying that this place is built to ruin relationships, to hide things from your spouses, but sometimes we make some decisions. Now, this isn't that bad. You didn't cheat. Everything's cool, baby. You just need to secure some shit for a little while. This is the space to do it. And you've already got your other cars here, so you can just go swap them in and out, do the thing, and you've got a great place to be with nice people. Ryan is going to make sure your car is clean. Edwin's going to make sure that your car has the appropriate tire pressure and that it's on a battery tender. And sometimes they identify shit. They're like, hey, did you notice this? They'll do your inspection stickers. I mean, this isn't just, hey, we're leaving your car and it'll be okay. It's like they manage the fleet. And I don't know about you. I got 4 cars. It's hard. Even with 4, even with 2, it can be a pain in the ass when you're like, it's inspection sticker day or all this crap. They do it all.
Yeah.
They take care. This is like if you're Jay Leno and you got 100 cars under one roof. He doesn't do that. He has a team. And now you have a team. Now you have a team of people who are looking out for you, who are going, hey, by the way, your sticker's going to expire. Let me go take care of it.
Yeah.
Done.
I mean, and they're going to go above and beyond to make sure that you're happy.
It's incredible. And it makes car ownership, when you have a bunch of them, so much better.
So much easier. I mean, as you very well know, you and I are not good at driving some of our vehicles.
No.
And since getting involved in this whole establishment, I've never thought more about the Camaro in the last 8 years than I have.
It's
this
way
year.
more fun to know that you're going to call Edwin, say, hey, today's the day, baby. Get that Camaro, get that Porsche ready for me. And he goes, yes, sir. You roll up, car's sitting there clean, waiting for you, warmed up, and I'm off. And it's the best thing ever. Now, it's closer to me. I like this Acton facility for a couple of reasons. 1, because it's closer to my house. 2, it's easier to get to. The roads going around here are so much quieter. It's a nice space. You're right off of Route 2. This is like for me personally, I feel like when I leave this place, I'm not just entering Boston traffic. I feel like, ooh, I'm where I want to be. Mm-hmm. I'm in like some nice, so it already now when I leave this place, I already have I have exactly what I want. I'm in my baby. I'm driving my sports car. I'm driving my M5. I'm driving my 911. Or I'm doing a review and my good friend Chris Cutie, the Depreciation Society, is saying, hey, you know what hasn't been driven in a while? The Rolls-Royce Wraith. Why don't you go put some miles on it? Enjoy it. Go up to Maine. Because he does that and he's the best. Chris, I fucking love you. Great. Anyway, this is too much. Now we got to sign off for real. Thank you guys so much for watching. You're not watching, listening to this podcast. Reach out to me on Instagram. Reach out to Eddy Siegel. Sign up for Garage 42. And if you don't sign up for Garage 42, at the very least, follow their Instagram page because there's always cool shit to see.
It's a lot of cool stuff.
Car owner's paradise. And I think we're good. So don't forget to respect the drive. And we'll see you in the next one.